people don't want to talk about drugs and don't want to talk about the drug war. The amount of media Tony is able to generate, not just for our team, but for partners and allies all around the country, it is just simply phenomenal. But part of the way that he does this is that Tony Newman is one of the most pure and kind souls you will ever meet. I always knew that. We were close, we connected from the day that we met, but when we worked together to put out the Jay-Z video that Tony helped generate 1,400 hits in less than 24 hours on that video, I can't tell you how many times that I would have said something mean to the New York Times. I cannot tell you how much he pulled me in, made sure that I knew how to deal with people, made sure I didn't lose my temper, because believe me, people say dumb shit. And just the ability to manage that and say, you know, 5 fingers into a fist and pull it all together. There is no one more masterful at pulling us all together than my friend and my colleague and my brother, Tony Newman.
Yay.
Thank you all. Thank you, Denise. And before we get started, can you tell me what time are we going to? So I can.
3 o'clock?
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And Asha, thank you for those kind words. And Denise and Gary and Grasp and everyone's here. I can't tell you how moved I've been just in the last 2 hours. And when you think of what people in this room have had to go through and the pain and the grief, and then to turn that into something where you're changing laws and changing hearts and changing minds. And I just heard you saved 10 people in your community, and in Illinois they've saved hundreds of people, and all around us, and passing laws so you can call 911 without fear. It should never be a crime to try to save someone's life and call 911. And if someone's overdosing, you should always have this drug that can reverse this overdose. And literally, because of people in this room, thousands and thousands of lives have been saved, and it's because of you guys, and that's what I'm in awe of, and that's what keeps me going. And so let's just thank everyone in this room who makes that stuff happen. So my name is Tony. You know, it's interesting, we were also just talking about relapse. I don't know, this is my drug, one of my drugs. I also like my vodka soda every day after work. But you know, I've tried to quit smoking so many times, and had tearful conversations with multiple of my ex-girlfriends and wives, how I'm gonna quit smoking and all this stuff. And anyone here a smoker? We made our promises and we quit. Thank God they don't put us in jail because you relapse or you have a dirty urine now, and we're gonna put you in jail. It's insane what we do. This idea of offering treatment and help for people, relapse is part of it. Putting someone in jail is never the answer for any of this stuff. I work at the Drug Policy Alliance. I've been there 16 years now. I'm from California, and I had a PR firm at the time, and in 1996 we were passing this 3 strikes you're outlaw. Anyone know the 3 strikes you're out? It was this tough on crime thing. Didn't matter what your 3rd felony was. You steal a pizza, 25 years to life. You get busted for a little bit of drugs, 25 years to life. They built 18 prisons in the time they built 1 university in California. And I told my PR partner, I was like, we have to do something on these prison issues. And he said, Tony, you want to get people out of jail? You got to change the drug laws. That's why so many people are there. And he handed me a book called Smoke and Mirrors by Dan Baum, and the light bulb went off. He's the one, you know the story that came out a few months ago in Harper's, how Nixon said, we got to figure out a way to blame the blacks without look like we're blaming the blacks? The guy who wrote that story in Harper's was the guy who wrote this book. It's an amazing book, Smoke and Mirrors. The light bulb went off in my head. And 16 years ago, Ethan Nadelman, my boss, called and said, Tony, we're looking for a media person. Do you know anyone who might be interested? I raised my hand, and I've been there now 16 years. Yay. And it is, thank God, and it is amazing. You know, never doubt, in the 16 years I've been there, marijuana legalization, someone asked about marijuana legalization, we still arrest 700,000 people a year for marijuana. These laws are changing in front of our eyes. And what that means is, when I say why I want to legalize marijuana, the number one reason is so we stop arresting hundreds of thousands of mostly black and Latino people off of marijuana. That's what sucks you into the criminal justice system, is being arrested for marijuana. We are watching that change in front of ours because of the activism that people do. This overdose crisis that we're dealing with right now, the people in this room, let me just tell you about the Drug Policy Alliance is a group. We think the war on drugs is not working. If someone has a drug problem, we need to give them help and compassion, not a jail cell. So there's different types of work we do. We are legalizing marijuana, and again, that's not because we like to get high, even though some of us do. It's because we don't want to arrest 600,000 people and get sucked into the system. Because of activism, we're seeing that change. This overdose crisis that's happening, the law, we were the first, we worked with our partners in New Mexico, we passed the first Good Samaritan law. Again, it should not be a crime to call 911. Now 15 states around the country have it. This naloxone, people around this table brought it to their communities, and we're seeing people saved. Tens of thousands of lives are being saved now on that. Mass incarceration, putting people in cages for this. We've been fighting the crack powder disparity, that, the mandatory minimums. I'm going to tell you about our coworker, Tony Pop, in a second. We want this to be a health issue. Everything from legalizing marijuana so we don't arrest people. We want harm reduction stuff so people aren't dying of overdose or getting HIV. And we want to get people out of prison. Asha and I have a coworker. His name is Tony Papa. He does the media stuff with me. And we're talking about the power of activism, the power of media. He grew up in the Bronx. He was struggling for money at a point in his life. He had a 3-year-old kid and a wife. One of his bowling buddies said, "You want to make $500? You want to make $500? Pass this envelope." Finally, he gives in, passes this envelope. 20 cops jump out. It was a sting. He was given 15 years to life, a mandatory minimum, with a 3-year-old daughter and a wife. That's how sick the drug war is. That his friend, to get less time, had to go get other people. How sick is that? He got our friend 15 years to life for a $500 deal, 15 years in jail. Tony Papa, he painted his self-portrait. He found his passion for art, and he painted this piece called 50, him looking in the mirror, realizing he's going to spend the best years of his life in a cage. It is a haunting-ass painting. It ended up showing in the Whitney Museum, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to use, the Whitney wanted to have a piece of art from someone behind bars. They chose his piece. He said, I'm going to use this to get me out of here." To our friend Tony, this was before there was a group, the Drug Policy. He sat at his typewriter behind bars and interviewed himself. What was your story? Why did you get busted? Da, da, da. Sent it to the local paper. They did a story. And then another paper did a story. And then the New York Times did a story. And he got so much attention for his story that the governor Pataki let him out of jail after 12 years. He gave him clemency. Tony Papa literally painted his way to freedom. But that's only the first half of the movie. When he got out of jail, he started organizing, the image at the time, and we were a group that, and this is all related to the media stuff and everyone in this room. We were, when he got out of jail, he said, we were groups like the Drug Policy Alliance putting out reports, oh, the laws are racist, 90% of the people in jail are black and Latino, it doesn't reduce crime, all these stats. He said, you know what? I'm going to organize people's brothers and sisters and family members of people out who are still behind. And they would hold up pictures like everyone here has around their neck. They held up pictures of their brothers and sisters and their moms who were spending 15 years in jail. These weren't kingpins and queens. These are people with like $500 deals. And those actions that they had, a small group, 15 people outside of the Rockefeller Plaza holding pictures of their loved ones, it totally changed the image of who was behind bars. Before it was these scary drug dealers and this and that. And they saw from people just like you speaking about their mother and their son and their daughter change the image, and then we literally changed the laws after 35 years, the Rockefeller drug laws. These were the first mandatory minimums in the country out of New York. And through that activism, the laws were changed and 1,000 people were able to come home. And that is the power of the media. And that is the power of people's personal stories, and that's what everyone in this room, it's what I'm here to say is, I'm a true believer in that the media is a powerful tool. It's not the only thing, it's one of the 5 fingers, Asha makes fun. It's one of the 5 fingers is the media stuff. The media is a very powerful tool, and the media works, and people open up their minds and hearts because of personal stories. That's how we learn about these things. Every single one of the women up here, when they told their story, that's going to touch people's hearts. And that media attention, the reason why we have these presidential candidates now everyone noticed this? I mean, if you guys were presidential candidates and all talking about we need to have compassion, that we can't incarcerate our way out of this, that they support, treatment and overdose prevention stuff is because of the activism and the stories that have come out. So I think, while there's a lot of pain and incredible amount of suffering, we are seeing some movement. We are seeing some opening up of this stuff. And I think it's the people whose stories that we've heard today and the media plays a role in all of that. So let me start off. I'm gonna speak a little bit, but I want to take questions just to hear where people are coming from. First of all, how many people here have done an interview before? And overall, how many people feel like after the story came out that it was something that was helpful and something that maybe moved things along a little bit? So that's right there. We see a number of people in this room have used the media to do that. What were some of the benefits that came out of getting that media coverage? What are some of the benefits that came out? Movement building. I heard some. Wait, I know this.
Tammy?
No, not Tammy. Lisa, or so saying after she writes something, she wrote 4 or 5 pieces, and people reached out to her afterwards. One, getting your story. You get a local op-ed in the paper. That's 50,000 people in your community hearing about it. That's humanizing that issue for them and realizing that that substance abuse is a problem in our community and that people are losing their lives and things. That's education right there, and it's people reaching out. How many people here have heard of graph somehow through searching the web or through a media clip? I mean, that is a powerful tool. So one is reaching people. What's another benefit of doing some of the media stuff?
Well, I'm answering your first question, but the story gets told the way it should be told when you have some control.
The media is going to be covering this overdose crisis and stuff. And, if people in this room share their stories with their analysis and with their understanding, there's different ways these stories can come out. If we're talking about sharing about, Tammy's story, my God, I just want to say, while I'm very encouraging and think that the media has a powerful tool, I totally understand that it may not be the right time to share your story. It may not be so. I'm not trying to say anyone. I'm not trying to push anyone out there who has to. I heard Tammy's story. I didn't even think of that before. Where her story was on the front page of the paper on the news. She didn't even have a choice. And her what she just told me backstage is like they were trying to they took an image off of Facebook, some weird shot that this and that, and we see this all the time when the police kill someone, they go and the power of like humanizing. Who's that? No, this is my son. And what Tammy said is she made the local TV reporters come to her house. Let's see his room. Let's see the posters on his wall. And we're gonna, and that's what Denise is talking about. You don't just get to some nameless person, some drug dealer, some drug addict. No, this was my son. This is the records that he liked to listen to. This was I know Jeff. I see his pictures. I know he was a surfer. I'm a surfer. You got to humanize. So there's a power. The importance of doing this media is like we're going to share our story, and we're going to humanize people, and we're going to offer up some of the solutions. We know there's some solutions. We know that you should be able to call 911 without fear of arrest. We know we should have naloxone to save a life. So this is some of the stuff that we can do with media. So who else has done a media experience and something that has come out of that?
We were really fortunate. The first time we came to a conference in 2012, we got to practice sharing our story in 1 minute. And I'm certainly not a public speaker. And that was frightening for me to do that 1 minute. But we went back and my son felt very empowered. And so because of what we learned about the Harm Reduction Coalition. In North Carolina, we have a really awesome leader in the Harm Reduction Coalition. And so my son got involved, and so we were given multiple opportunities, but we were cradled by the Harm Reduction Coalition. They took us to the places they knew were safe for us to share our stories, and in front of legislative committees, and they would guide us about what we should say and not say. And so we had a lot of help. And if we hadn't, it really would have been a disaster for us.
So that's a very important, powerful point, and it was the importance of working with people who could, you could practice sharing your story, figure out how, it's hard to tell something so personal and so painful in 1 minute? And you know, what do you want to get across? And so the importance of like kind of, you know, practicing that and thinking that through. So I want to get to that in a second. First, again, the first thing I want to start off with is that the media is a tool, and it can be very helpful, and it can change hearts, it can change laws. The reason these elected officials are talking about this a lot is because of the media. And I've seen the legislation that we heard about in Iowa, in Illinois, in Virginia. I guarantee you there were sympathetic stories coming out that helped pass those laws. So the media is a tool. I also want to say, I totally get that it's how, you know, Asha said it very powerfully. I never, you know, even think about it. Here she is talking about the courage to talk about her son who was killed, but then she's also reflecting like, you know what, my daughter's applying to college right now. Or you may live in a community where, you know, there is, you know, you don't want people to be thinking, you know, it's hard to put your story. So I want to get across a couple points here. One is, I think the role of the media can be very powerful. I saw it change the way people thought about the people who were incarcerated in New York under the Rockefeller drug laws. I've seen how it's been used to change legislation around overdose stuff. It can connect you with other people in your community. It can help change these laws. It can help raise money for your organization. There are things that can come with it, but I'm also being realistic and not saying, you know, go out there and there's going to be some media that's very sensationalistic and also. So we're going to get to all that in a second. But what are some other reasons, some positive things that may come from using media? People, either positive experiences had or even a negative experience. Let's hear some of the times where it didn't work out.
I just want to say that I think sensationalism comes along a lot when you do interviews with the media. So what I did for myself and for my son, because I wanted his story to be reflected in a positive manner, I talked to that media person and asked him to please quote me accurately, but to please, other people use words in reference to active drug users that I don't like. Please don't put those words into what I'm talking to you about. Please tell my story the way I give it to you. And you know they do. Yeah. You just have to be honest and tell the truth and ask them for the same. And I haven't had, well, maybe a few kind of squirrely experiences, but nothing really negative. But I spoke out to them and asked them to please tell it the way I tell it to you.
Yeah. And I do believe that, you know, for a lot of the journalists, look, the people in this room, we just heard your stories.